She pressed it into my hand like it was supposed to mean something. A silver keychain cracked straight through the middle, its hinge barely holding. No birthday, no holiday, no inside joke between us. Just saw this and thought of you. Her voice carried that casual lilt she used whenever she wanted me not to ask questions. And I didn't, not out loud. I turned it over, studied the way the fracture cut across the polished surface, and forced a smile I didn't feel. It wasn't the kind of present you give someone you love. It was the kind of present you give when you're testing distance, when you want to see how lightly you can push before the other person notices. I noticed. But I played along, because that's what I'd been doing for months now, watching, collecting details, waiting to understand the pattern. The gift was wrong, but so was the timing. She handed it to me after an evening where she barely looked up from her phone. The light of the screen had painted her face all night, and when she finally spoke, it wasn't to ask about my day or share anything about hers. It was to drop the object in my palm like a dealer sliding chips across a table. The fracture in the keychain reminded me of a window I broke as a kid, a single crack that spidered upward until the whole pane collapsed. I ran my thumb across the jagged line and couldn't shake the image. A warning. A prophecy. She kissed my cheek after, quick and hollow, then walked to the bedroom without waiting for me. The sound of the keychain hitting the knife, and when I set it down echoed louder than it should have. I stared at it for a long time that night, the way you stare at a puzzle piece you know doesn't belong in the picture. It was small, trivial, easy to dismiss, and yet I couldn't. Because sometimes the smallest things are the ones that tell the truth first. I didn't know then what it meant. Only that it didn't fit. And neither, if I was honest, did she anymore. Secrecy doesn't announce itself with alarms. It seeps in, drip by drip, until silence feels heavier than words. Hers began with small adjustments, things I could have dismissed if I wanted to. The phone flipped face down on the table, even when it wasn't buzzing. Late returns from work that came within the explanations, meetings ran long, or I stopped at the store. She never came back with bags from that store. Then the locked folder disappeared. Our shared cloud, replaced with vacation photos and old documents lived, suddenly had a new layer I didn't recognize. Password protected. Hidden from me. She brushed it off when I asked to just work stuff you wouldn't understand. But her work had never been secret before. The cracked silver keychain, the one she'd given me as if it were thoughtful, started showing up on her back instead of mine. I would find it dangling there when she walked through the door, the split surface catching light as she dropped her purse by the couch. It wasn't lost on me. A gift she claimed was for me, carried by her. Like a flag raised in private, one I wasn't meant to see. Digital shadows began to grow. Notifications on my email that the password had been reset, except I hadn't reset it. Location pings from accounts I didn't open. Small signs that something else was living in the wires of our life, moving without my permission. One night I woke to the sound of her typing beside me. Her screen glowed against the wall. When I shifted, she turned her body away like a child hiding a note in class. I said nothing. My silence was an agreement, it was inventory. Their knees tightened when I caught her studying me, but only when she thought I wasn't looking. Quick glances, measuring ones, like she was checking how much I knew. That told me more than her words ever could. I wanted to tell myself I was imagining it. That stress was twisting ordinary behavior into shadows. But suspicion doesn't grow in a vacuum. It needs evidence, no matter how small. And the evidence was stacking. The keychain became my marker. Every time it clicked against her purse strap, I heard it as a metronome of distance. It reminded me that things were being moved in silence, both digital and personal. I didn't yet know the shape of what she was building in secret, but I knew it wasn't meant to include me. The first crack I could point to landed on a Thursday that wouldn't quit. I came home and found her at the counter, 4 inch in height, smiling at something I couldn't hear. She answered with a lifted hand without looking up. The silver keychain, my gift that wasn't mine, hung from her tooth again. The split line flashed when she moved, clinking against the zipper ring. I watched her laugh, a private laugh she hadn't offered me in months. "Good day?" I asked, rinsing a glass to keep my hands busy. She set the phone face down and said, "Busy." "You?" I mentioned a client deck. She nodded at the wrong beat, attention locked to the rectangle under her palm. When it buzzed, she pressed her hand down harder. She stood, lifted her back, and the keychain sang a small metal note. On her way to the hall mirror, the phone lit under her fingers. For a single frame, I saw my name, quotation marks around it inside a thread that wasn't ours. I couldn't read the line, only the shape of the letters, the way you recognize your own signature from across a room. What? She asked, catching my face in the mirror. She adjusted head that didn't need adjusting and waited. I shook my head. Nothing. I didn't need a record of her defense, I needed a record of what I'd seen. In the bathroom, the faucet ran longer than anyone needs to wash their hands. I tried generous explanations, her friend quoting me, a reminder she typed, a joke that would land differently with context. Early evidence of eyes or maybes. I let them exist, but kept them out of reach. She came out wrapped in routine. I'm going to lie down, she said, already halfway to the bedroom. I told her I'd join after an email and opened my laptop to send myself a message: time, room, what I'd seen, what it could be, what it probably was. Not for drama. For accuracy. The house settled. Rising to rinse the glass, my heel tapped something under the chair. The keychain skittered loose from her tote. I picked it up. The crack feathered at the edges, smooth then sharp. I set it in the middle of the table instead of putting it back. If she noticed later, I wanted the sound metal and wanted it to be her discovery, not mine. Before bed, I checked our cloud. The new lock folder was still there, its title edited by a single letter. I couldn't open it and didn't try. I only needed to confirm the pattern, laugh too hard, hide the phone, my name where it didn't belong. From the doorway, I saw her already asleep on her side, phone tucked beneath the pillow. I lay down without reaching for her. Could I explain any of this to a stranger without sounding paranoid? Maybe not. That's how first clues arrive disguised as coincidence, asking you to apologize for noticing. I didn't apologize. I wrote the night down and let it stand. In the morning she spotted the keychain and asked, neutral, is that yours or mine? I said, depends who's carrying it. She smiled the practice smile she uses to sand edges. You're funny, she said, clipping it back to her tote. The crack flashed once and then the door took her away. I didn't follow. I tightened my focus. Look what I saw, watch notifications, stop volunteering context she could later quote. First evidence behavior. Still explainable. Still enough to move me back a step from the version of her she performed in public. The keychain would travel with her, I let it. Every faint click against that bag wrote a date I wouldn't forget. Character count 3,474. Some truths arrived by accident. Mine showed up one night when the house had gone still, when only the hum of the fridge and the faint rattle of pipes marked the hour. I passed through the living room to grab a glass of water and caught her reflection in the window. She was sitting on the couch, phone angled low, face illuminated by the kind of smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. It was the kind of smile people don't rehearse. Not the polite one she gave at dinner parties, not the reflex grin she used when someone complimented her dress. This was different, unguarded, private, layered with a warmth she had carefully withdrawn from our life together. I froze in the doorway, glass half raised, watching her reflection instead of her directly. She didn't see me, and I didn't make a sound. She typed quickly, paused, laughed quietly to herself, then bit her lip in that absent-minded way I remembered from our early days. The part that cut deepest wasn't just that she had reserved that expression for someone else. It was the realization that I hadn't been the reason for it in a long time. On the table beside her was her tote, and hanging from it, because of course it was the cracked silver keychain. The fractured line caught a streak of moonlight, looking like a scar etched across metal. My eyes went from that glint to her smile, and the pieces fell together with a weight I couldn't ignore. The keychain wasn't just some broken trinket, it was a marker, a subtle echo of the division already running through us. I stepped back into the shadow of the hall. My pulse wasn't racing, it was steady, cold, as if my body had already accepted what my mind had tried to reject. I didn't confront her. I didn't even clear my throat to make her aware of my presence. Instead, I went back to the kitchen, set the empty glass on the counter, and listened to the faint sound of her typing. Each keystroke was another nail sealing the truth. Later, when she came to bed, she slipped beneath the covers without a word. I felt the mattress dip, her body turning away, the phone disappearing under her pillow as if it needed protection. She didn't kiss me goodnight. She didn't even feign routine anymore. That silence told me more than any spoken excuse ever could. I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The outline of the night repeated in my head, reflection, smile, lip bite, keychain. Those were the coordinates, the proof I couldn't explain away this time. Context didn't matter. Friends quoting my name in text, work stuff in locked folders, busy days at the office, those excuses collapsed against the reality of seeing her give herself, even in fragments, to someone else. By morning, I no longer doubted. The distance wasn't imagined. It was observable. I had witnessed the shift with my own eyes, not through inference or suggestion, but directly unfiltered. She tried to carry on with small talk over coffee, but her words felt thin, mismatched with the images still burning in my mind. The smile I saw in the glass wasn't for me. It hadn't been for a long time. The cracked keychain swung lightly from her back as she left for the day. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. Its sound was now inseparable from the confirmation I'd received. The fracture wasn't just metal anymore, it was us, etched, visible, undeniable. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee and sat at the table alone. It was the first morning I stopped pretending the fracture could be smoothed over. I knew then, whatever game she was playing in secret, I was no longer a participant. I was the audience, and the performance had already written its ending. Escalation didn't arrive as shouting. It arrived as headers and timestamps. She left her laptop half closed on the dining table. I nudged it away from a sweating glass and the screen woke to an email draft to a downtown phone. Subject clarifying separate property. In the body, she listed the condo, the car in my name, a savings account I'd never seen for professional expenses, and asked about temporary exclusive occupancy if tensions increase. The cracked silver keychain lay beside the trackpad like a paperweight. I didn't touch anything. I read once slowly until the screen dimmed. Other tabs filled in the rest. A retainer agreement downloaded after midnight, a PDF titled Separate Accounts Next Steps, a search for notaries near her gym. The history showed how to redirect mail, exchange beneficiaries, and marital vs personal assets. Not curiosity. Preparation. My phone buzzed, a verification code from our bank I hadn't requested. In the app, an attempted transfer from the joint account to that professional expenses account had failed for lack of second approval. She came in humming, rain in her hair, toot on her shoulder. The keychain tapped the table twice. She saw the open laptop, slid it shut with 2 fingers, and smiled like I'd interrupted a recipe instead of a roadmap. Power flickered, she asked, wringing her sleeve. I said the storm woke the screen. She nodded, calm, already loading the story she'd use later. I opened my own computer and created a folder labeled plainly Documentation. Screenshots of timestamps. The failed transfer alert saved as a PDF. A photo of the keychain by the trackpad, because symbols matter when facts get contested. I set alerts on every account, placed a credit freeze change recovery email she had once helped me create. Morning brought more proof. A notice blinked in our mail app, request to forward correspondence to a new address. I cancelled it. Minutes later, I found the same form saved in her drafts from yesterday. The pattern was clean now. She wasn't just crafting a narrative. She was building an exit. A new calendar invite hit the shared account from a law office, consultation, asset clarification. She hadn't scrubbed the metadata. My name showed in the notes, not as partner but as concern re-control. The language was soft but loaded an attempted shift that recast boundaries as harm. I sat with that phrase. Years ago she'd asked me to handle paperwork because I was better at details. I'd taken it as trust. Now those details had become a lever, pressure along the seam. That night she moved through the kitchen light to the weather, poured tea, lifted the tote. The keychain winked like it knew a date I didn't. You good? She asked, leaning on the island as if we were still us. Work, I said. She nodded, full and tucked away a person tucks an heirloom. The wrist had changed shape. No more whispers of face-down screens. This was paperwork that could lock doors, signatures that could reroute what we'd built. So I made copies. I backed up drives. I photographed the keychain in different light because objects anchor truth when people try to edit it later. And I waited, not passive, not in it steady the way you get when you finally accept the weather for what it is. She was preparing for after. I began preparing for proof. I thought the fracture was only between us. That was the mercy I allowed myself, the idea that her silence lived in a closed circle. But betrayals don't respect neat borders. They bleed outward, pulling in people you never auditioned for the role. The name surfaced on a message preview. I wasn't supposed to see it. Her phone lit while charging on the counter, screen unlocked by mistake. My cousin's name bold at the top, followed by a line that didn't belong between family. Can't wait until it's only us. I didn't open the thread. I didn't need to. The tone was a signature in itself. No cousin jokes, no casual shorthand. This was possession disguised as intimacy. That night at dinner, she laughed at a story he'd posted online, one I hadn't noticed until she slid her phone across for me to see. He was holding a glass of the bar we both used to hold in college. The caption was nothing too words about the game on TV, but the way she waited for my reaction gave it weight. Like a magician daring me to notice the card in the wrong pocket. Memories collided in real time. Cookouts, weddings, late night drives with him in the passenger seat. He was the one who had vouched for me when she first entered the picture, who toasted us at our engagement, who had been like a brother. The thought that every glance exchanged at family tables might have carried a second meaning pressed like stone on my chest. The cracked keychain swung from her bag when she stood to clear dishes. I watched it, wondering if she had ever laughed with him about the fracture, if they'd twisted it into a metaphor for me without saying my name. The keychain wasn't a gift anymore. It was an emblem, a private joke with an audience I hadn't chosen. I went back through my own memory with new suspicion. His early exits from gatherings. Her smiles at messages received under the table. The way she'd pressed me to invite him to things I hadn't planned on. It was all scaffolding now, visible only after the collapse. I told myself to breathe, to keep posture steady. Evidence mattered more than rage. I wasn't going to be the fool who lost control and gave them an easy narrative. I wanted their own choices to do the talking. Later, when she excused herself to take a work call, I saw the name again reflected in the glass of the oven door. My cousin. The contact photo I'd seen years before when he asked me to help him set up his phone. The symmetry was cruel. I didn't interrupt. I didn't step closer. I let her whisper in the hallway while the cracked keychain tapped against the wall as she shifted the toad on her shoulder. That sound had become the metronome of distance, and now it kept time for the revelation I could no longer soften. The fracture was never accidental. It mirrored what she had already carved, not just a split between us, but a split through bloodlines, through family dinners and decades of trust. And the cruelest part wasn't the secrecy, it was the casualness. As if betrayal was just another room she could enter without removing her shoes. When she came back, she kissed my cheek and asked if I wanted dessert. I nodded. My voice stayed level. She didn't notice the silence inside me had changed shape. I wasn't just suspicious anymore. I was certain. And certainty is colder than doubt. I didn't plan a speech. Words would have turned the moment into theatre, and theatre was what she thrived on. I wanted absence, not applause. So I began with the small mechanics of leaving. Quiet drawers, careful zippers. I packed a travel bag in silence, choosing only essentials, documents, clothes that folded thin, backups of the files I had already duplicated. Each item slid into place with that sound, like I was curating an exhibit no one else would see. The cracked silver keychain lay on the dresser where she had tossed it earlier, its fracture catching the lamp glow. I picked it up, turned it in my hand once, then set it on the kitchen counter where she would have to face it in the morning. Not as a gift. Not as an accusation. Just an object left behind, holding every chapter she thought she'd hidden. She was asleep when I moved through the house. Phone under her pillow, arm thrown across my side of the bed. Her breathing stayed even as I paused at the doorway. I didn't linger long. Watching her would have tempted me to ask for answers she'd already given to someone else. I locked the door behind me without slamming it. The click of the latch sounded final, but not dramatic. Just a seal closing over a room I no longer lived in. The street was empty, the hour somewhere between night and dawn, and I walked to my car with the calm weight of someone who has already rehearsed this scene in his head 100 times. There were no texts left on the counter, no notes, no hints of return. If she wanted to explain, she would have to explain to silence. If she wanted to reach me, she would have to realize first that I had stopped being reachable. Driving away, I checked the mirrors not for traffic but for the faint outline of a home that wasn't mine anymore. Windows dark, curtains drawn, the cracked keychain on the counter waiting for daylight. She would find it and she would know. Not because I told her, but because objects don't lie the way people do. I didn't imagine her reaction. That was part of the discipline. Whether she cried, cursed, or staged some version of herself for friends later, none of it mattered. My exit wasn't an argument. It was a fact. And facts hold more weight than any performance ever could. By the time the sun edged over the horizon, I was already miles out, the travel bag steady in the sea beside me. No messages buzzed my phone, not yet. She was still asleep, still dreaming in a room that felt unchanged, until she opened her eyes and realized the air had shifted. I left nothing for her to answer, no script for her to follow. Just absence. The purest confrontation there is. Morning made the silence visible. The house looked the same, but everything knew I was gone. Her first message landed before sunrise, 3 dots, then, "Where did you go?" I didn't answer. An hour later, "This isn't funny." Then a note about misunderstandings and taking a beat. Leaving wasn't a debate, it was a decision. By noon she changed strategy. A soft light photo on her feed, framed so the cracked silver keychain sat near her hand on purpose. Caption, "Fresh starts are messy." Hearts came from acquaintances, the usual chorus, "Stay quiet." By night, the like count looked smaller than the room she took it in. A new thread formed without her. "One message, you good?" Then I replied, "Fine." I wasn't campaigning. I was minding my perimeter. Family moods lower. My aunt sent back a photo of folding chairs, the crooked cake, everyone except my cousin. To tell him we missed him, she wrote, and nothing else. Later I heard he was keeping it low. Translation, "Stay out of the frame until the frame changes." Invitations drifted away with the discretion of good manners. Group plans rerouted, addresses changed last minute. People weren't issuing verdicts, they were creating distance. That's how reputations change, not with speeches, with empty chairs. She tried to recenter the story. A golden hour clip, the keychain on her toe, overlaid text about learning and growth. Replies were off. The next slide quoted communication like it was wholesale. My life went official, short lease, new mailbox, utilities split cleanly. I answered only logistics, packages, bills, the time to pick up the last of her mail. When friends asked what happened, I didn't narrate. "Things cracked," I said. They understood without follow-ups. Her messages bent toward nostalgia next. "A like photo from 2 summers ago, remember?" I put the phone face down and finished the form. "Nostalgia asks for a door, I had already locked it." Then the apology that wasn't, "If I misled you, I'm sorry you felt that way." The grammar carried all the weight and none of it was hers. I didn't respond. Silence wasn't revenge, it was refusing to audition for a part I didn't want. The family thread went neutral, birthdays with her. My cousin stopped posting. That quiet indicted more cleanly than any text will. People drew conclusions on their own. Truth moves faster when you stop dragging it. I didn't gloat. I wanted a corridor, runs at dawn, work that improved when I stopped making room for noise, dinners that tasted like food instead of performance. Peace doesn't photograph well. That's the point. Mutuals called to check in, then waited for me to fill silence. I let the pause pass. If they asked how I was, I said, busy. If they asked what happened, I repeated, things cracked. As for her, the circle she curated then to a line, then to a dot. The people who once reflected her back at herself found other mirrors. The keychain vanished from her posts. Maybe it finally broke. Maybe she finally saw it the way I did, not an accessory evidence. There's no moral here, no maybe someday. Some endings are just doors that close and stay closed. I didn't disappear from the world, I disappeared from her version of it. The audience she trained to clap learned a new habit, keeping their hands in their laps. She wanted the last word. She can have it. I kept the last fact, you cracked it first. I simply stopped catching the pieces.